So I'm here this morning with Steph Fuccio, who is the creator of the global podcast community, global podcast editors community. I'm messing it up already, which is a Substack and YouTube channel, and basically kind of a support system and education system for podcasters around the world. Steph, you're in Croatia at the moment, but you sort of travel around. I think last time I spoke to you, you were in Italy. Tell me a little bit, if you can, about how you started the global podcast editors community.
Yeah, all of my projects actually. Oh, hi, everybody. All of my projects stem from my own curiosity. And when I started doing podcast editing for clients a couple of years ago, the biggest help that I had was in the forums and communities and things that I found with other podcast editors and other audio editors. And I wanted more. So I tend to be, I really like faces and people's facial expressions as they're talking to each other and connecting and things. So I really wanted to put that into the world in a global way where we're not just in one place. So it just kind of all slowly came together. So I did one round last April, and then I tried again for National Podcast Posting Month in November. And then since November, it's stuck, and we're doing it mostly every 2 weeks now.
And so you're kind of supporting and communicating with editors around the world. It's sort of a barrierless way of communicating.
Well, my podcasting started when I lived in Shanghai, China in 2017. So my entire podcasting existence has been outside of my passport country. So the only thing I know is to connect with folks all around the world. That's kind of just what I've done in and outside of podcasting my whole life. So it's just kind of extended over into podcast editing.
And let's talk then a bit about that experience in China, because I know absolutely nothing about the Chinese podcast market. I know nothing about how podcasts are even really distributed in China, because most things in China, there are different mechanisms for how things get out there. What was that like? What was your experience of being a podcaster in China?
A step closer than what you described, but not fully immersed. It's a very closed market unless you're in the culture and in the language, and I did not get to, in 3 years, like the fluency I needed to do that. However, I did talk to some Chinese podcasters and people in that market, and it is much more of a paid, like they went subscription model way sooner. And a lot of the podcasts, from what I understand, and this is 2-year-old information, so it may have changed because things are very rapidly changing. But as of 2 years ago, when I left, it was much more of like self-help and business information. And they were like nuggets of things you would want to pay for to improve your life and to improve your business. So that was what I knew then. But again, things change so fast in podcasting globally, and things change really fast in China. I mean, especially in the bigger markets like Shanghai and Beijing, it's like an Etch-a-Sketch kind of place. Like things are so rapid.
And in Shanghai and Beijing, then, I mean, presumably the vast majority of content being produced in China is in Chinese. But presumably there is also an element of English language podcasting being made, particularly out of kind of big financial centers and that sort of thing.
That's interesting. From my experience there, most of the English language stuff was done by folks who were there, but not on Chinese platforms.
Right.
Yeah. I actually got one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But by Chinese people who were there, or by, like Western journalists in situ in Shanghai?
Not just Western. I would say non-Chinese podcasters. I wouldn't say just journalists, although there was that niche as well. But I don't know if I think there were. I did know a couple of Chinese podcasters who also broadcasted or made podcasts in English, but the vast majority of the Chinese podcasters I came in contact with podcasted in Chinese, and then everybody else, not just Westerners, was doing it in English or other languages.
Right. And then, so you left China a couple of years ago, and since then you've kind of, I guess you've moved around, but you've predominantly not been working with Chinese clients. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah. No, I've never worked with Chinese clients. I actually didn't even start podcast editing for clients until I left.
Okay. And so what are the kind of experiences you would say, the big kind of differences that you've encountered? Kind of what was the kind of whiplash thing of realizing, hey, how things are done in China is not the same as how things are done wherever you were at that point?
Well, okay. When I was in China, again, most of my podcasting life was sort of based in the West. So, and in some other countries, depending on which podcasters I was in contact with. So I was never really fully immersed in the Chinese podcast market because of my own language barriers and probably some cultural and other barriers in there. So it wasn't a shock to me because that's what my podcasting home felt like. So it was just easier because I didn't have to worry about my VPN anymore, and I didn't. It was easier to upload sometimes, but not always. And it was a little bit. It was easier to form podcasting groups and media groups and things because of different restrictions and cultural things. So for me, it actually got easier because that's how I was podcasting already.
Right. So you're just kind of continued, mainly your kind of workflow in a way continued as it was. You kind of still had the same client base that you were kind of dealing with.
I guess the best way to deal with it, and this is very strange for most people and most business people, is that I've never been one location person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been me my entire life. That was me when I started podcasting, and that's me when I'm podcast editing. I'm moving around a lot more now than normal, but I still tend to move around, and I still tend to be in contact with people in different places. It's just part of who I am and what I'm curious about.
What are the downsides then? We can come to the pros, and so it kind of heads in an optimistic trajectory. What are the downsides of kind of remote editing? I mean, what do you kind of feel are the cautions you would offer to people who are saying, perhaps from the client perspective, being like, I could hire an editor in Shanghai, or I could hire an editor in Canberra or Rio. Are there any things that they should be kind of wary about?
Well, no, I don't think for the podcaster hiring the editor, I don't think that's a big deal, because honestly, unless you're producer and editor, I don't think you really need to be in the same place or same time zone. For the editor themselves, if you're doing the digital nomad lifestyle, which I'm accidentally in right now, I'd be wary of bad furniture wherever you're living. It's hard to get that really great ergonomic office if you're moving every few months or so. So I think that's probably the biggest downfall for the podcast editor.
So from your perspective, as a sort of part of teams that are based in lots of different locations, it doesn't make you don't think it makes a difference to your workflow. I mean, I make a podcast with Australian clients. I'm based in London. The time difference between London and Australia is pretty big. And we've sometimes done things where we're communicating between London, Australia, and the US, which kind of presents huge kind of logistical problems. You haven't encountered any logistics because it happens when it happens, kind of in the edit, in the post-production.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I'm trying to think. No, we haven't really had any emergencies or anything that needed to be dealt with at a specific time and place. A lot of our stuff, our communication areas are in different spots online, whether it be Notion or Trello or what have you. And I've worked with folks. I haven't worked with anybody in Australia yet, but I do have clients in Europe and in North America. And I haven't, if anything, it's a slight advantage to have, if you're a North American podcaster, to have an editor in Europe or in Asia, because they can finish things while you're sleeping. Yep. So I like that part of it, but I haven't hit any walls yet. I'm sure they exist, but it's just been a couple of years so far.
So this is kind of an optimistic vision of this kind of global podcasting world already. You even my negatives question has become an optimistic one.
Minus the chiropractic bill, yes.
Right.
It is.
Of course. But it kind of unlocks a huge world of opportunities if you do kind of get rid of this idea that your whole team needs to be based in the same neighborhood. Do you think that COVID has changed, has it kind of accelerated a trend that was pre-existing there, or has it not been consequential?
I don't know. I wasn't doing this before COVID. I left China about 2 months before it hit Europe. So right.
You could have been patient one.
I could be. I could have brought it to Germany. Sorry.
But so you think that this was your plan before COVID came along? You were kind of knew that this is kind of where you were going.
Oh no. No, the world turned upside down and this kind of accidentally and then intentionally happened. So no, this wasn't the plan.
Okay. And then kind of, I guess the logical extension of all of this is the
Mm-hmm.
and I think we've seen this in a lot of industries. I'm thinking, for instance, of like, I have a few friends who work in visual effects, and visual effects in the UK and visual effects in North America have been massively undercut, I would say, by visual effects houses in particularly the Asian subcontinent. And I just wondered whether, do you think that's something that people should be thinking about, being like, well, look, can I get very efficient, good value editing, perhaps from somewhere like India, or conversely, is it something that people who are doing this professionally but who are doing it remotely should be wary of the fact that, like all kind of remote industries, there's a chance that it could just be undercut?
I think there are a lot of jobs that can be outsourced to places where the local wage is lower. And I think that's been something that people have been really scared about for a long time. But to be quite honest with you, I haven't. I mean, my clients are mostly independent podcasters with small businesses, and I haven't had them go to or like transfer from me to a lower cost editor. I don't think it's not really where I pitch my tent for me personally. I'm more of a boutique service than I'll do your dialogue editing very quickly and cheaply. I don't really lead into that market. Having said that, I've on the Global Podcast Editors YouTube channel, I've interviewed a owner of a company in the Philippines that has 100 clients, and they do editing very cheaply. And it's just part of the market. I think it's been part of the market for a lot of industries for a long time. I think there's plenty of room for all of us, to be quite honest. I mean, podcasting's bursting. Is that too optimistic?
No, it's too optimistic for me, but you get to say whatever you want.
I honestly think there's enough work for all of us.
Can I ask then on that kind of on that nitty gritty point of like, do you because presumably working with international clients sometimes can be a very difficult thing for people's payment systems, for people's tax affairs, that sort of thing. How does it work for you? Do you usually just kind of work under the whatever the kind of the let the client take the lead in terms of all their, or do you kind of have a specific arrangement that you do things?
Well, because my passport country is the US, I have bank accounts there. And then I have more international bank accounts, I guess you could say, like Wise, used to be TransferWise. And there's a few more. I think Revolut, which I haven't used yet, is an option that hasn't really come up, but I'm ready. I have a feeling at some point it might. And there's always PayPal, although they just raised their rates again.
Right.
So I tend to veer away from that. But there are a number of options to get around that. It just depends on the podcaster and what they have available. So just like for client management systems or project management systems, I tend to say, I know these, I have these available, which one works for you? And I kind of just go in that. But again, I started out as someone who had this kind of global flexibility. So it's not hard for me to add those. It's not really adding those on. I had those and then said, oh, I can use this for the business.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit easier, I think, for me than someone just going straight from their home country into this thing.
Right. And I wonder if that's the kind of the key here is flexibility, just being like able to offer clients basically whatever they need. Because I've paid contractors in the US, and some have very I have to go through this whole kind of US bank transfer. It's not very simple to make a bank transfer between the UK bank account and a US bank account, shockingly. And actually, like, PayPal provides a really simple workaround for that, but sometimes contractors just don't have that available, and it's on me as the payer to kind of make that work. But so I guess for me as the hirer, I would really appreciate that flexibility. And I wonder whether just generally flexibility is what makes global podcast editing work for you.
And also in my just even before the discovery call, I have a form for folks to fill out, and I say, how would you like to pay for this if we do end up working together? And I list off the options that I have, and they pick. If they pick none, then I'm happy to connect them to someone else, but I can't really,
like
extend too far beyond what I'm able to do. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Look, this is great. And we're probably running out of time, but can I just ask you then for like a final word of advice? If I was just thinking about packing up my bags, leaving my dog here on his own, and moving to, let's say, Europe, but then with a plan to go onto Asia, kind of what would be the kind of the one chunk of advice that you would give me, which you think would see me most comfortably through the experience?
Okay, I need to do
good
two.
furniture.
One is well, if you're moving around a lot, I'm not sure how that's possible, but
Okay.
two, one in general, if you're going to leave your home country, pack half as much stuff and twice as much money as you think you'll need. And the
Okay.
second thing for
Sell the other half of my stuff.
podcast editing, try to set up as much as you can before you leave. Expect some technical glitches in the first few places until you get used to knowing the technology in the places that, whether it be the Wi-Fi or what have you, where you are, you're going to be dependent on the internet. So you need to be in some sort of flow before you start doing this. So start a little bit before you go and then go remote.
Right. Is there any country in the world you'd like to call out for having particularly bad internet connections?
Germany.
Germany is famous for its bad internet.
It really is. And it perplexes me because it's a tech hub. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sure the companies within tech have great internet and they're taking it away from everybody else. I don't know. I have no idea what it is, but I was in Berlin for 9 months and it was a struggle fest.
Right. Okay. Well, Germany, sort it out.
Sorry, Germany, but come on.
Because otherwise you can't, you know, all these entrepreneurs who could be coming into your cities and filling it with podcast editing can't do it. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me. And can I just encourage everyone, if I didn't do it at the beginning, you've all sat through all of this, so Substack, is there a link?
Global Podcast Editors. It's Substack. We're in a podcast forum, YouTube channel, and on the socials, I'm going to point incorrectly. Right here. My name is my website address, and okay, wherever it is at the bottom of the screen.
There you go.
My website address and my Twitter handle and my LinkedIn, and all of those places. I'm all over the place.
Perfect. Well, thank you for speaking to me. Thank you for like everything that you do for podcasters, because it's nice.
Right back at you. Your writing's amazing, by the way, but
I have to cut this off now because otherwise it's
okay.
otherwise it seems like a sycophantic